Hey everybody, thought I'd show a little tutorial on how to switch an ignition switch in a 98 Corolla, but this goes for a lot of other vehicles as well. Um, when I was looking around, I found tons of questions on this topic and like zero videos. There was a couple for Ford and stuff like that. So I figured since I completed the job, I'd pop something up there just in case it could help somebody else. So I'm going to turn this around here and show you what we got. This was the old switch that came out. And the problem with it, try and keep this in one place so we're not jerking the camera around. The problem with this was, we actually bought the car off this fellow because he couldn't turn it on. And we got it like dirt cheap. And he could not get the key to go in that switch. Now keep in mind this has been hammered severely, so it's not supposed to look like that. And he couldn't get the key past like about 1/3 of the way in. So here's our new switch in there. So essentially his problem was when he would go to put the key in and try and get the right angle here, it would only go in like maybe the first, let's say this much of the key went into the lock, and therefore the car wouldn't start and it was completely jammed, and they tried everything except the locksmith, which is, they're pretty prohibitively expensive. They're not cheap to come out. Just for them to arrive on location, as you know, is depending where you live and who they are, whatever, 150, 200 bucks, and they go to work. And these locks, this one right here, this was about, I think, 250 bucks. Some had it for 150. I got the one that you see in the ignition on eBay for 25 bucks. Free shipping, shipped in 2 days, no problems whatsoever. I live in Canada, shipped it to the place in Blaine, crossed the border, picked it up, no problems at all. It is made in China. You can feel there's a definite difference in the quality. It's lighter, the key's a little bit lighter as well. But I don't see it being an issue unless you're planning to really hammer the hell out of the car. This car's already old enough. I think it'll last the life. So, how do we take this thing out? Well, going back to the main problem, I wanted to cover a couple issues. Since this guy couldn't get the key in, and I bought the car, couldn't start it. First thing, of course, I tried was jiggling the key around, and obviously, if you feel you can't get the key in at all, or turn it, you're going to want to shake, and I know a lot of people are going to go, no kidding, but a lot of people don't realize if your steering wheel, you turn it really hard on a hill or whatever, you're just turning into a parking spot, and you shut the key off while it's turning back, it's got a lot of torque on it like this, it'll snap and hold, and it will hold that lock, because there is a steering lock down here, which I'm not doing a very good job of filming at all in this whole apparatus. So the first thing you want to do is try to, gotta get this back so you can see from like a wide angle, is just to pull on take your tension off the wheel, and then at the same time work your key, and then try it the other way. So if that is not your problem, then we're going to go on to step number 2, which is if your ignition is truly buggered, which in this case has wafers. It doesn't have the pins like you have in a regular lock. These things have wafers. Pretty common with these Corollas, Ford Focus, really, really common. So when you turn these things to accessory, these can be removed. So I'll demo this on the other one here. If I were able to stick my key in all the way, and if I could just turn it one position to accessory, right there, that's it. This is the very first position, which unlocks the steering wheel. And then the next position is when all your lights come on in the dash, and the last position is cranking. Once you turn it on there, this pin, and try and get a decent shot of it, you can see it raised up there. You can now, ooh, look at that, you can push it in and out. And once you push that pin in, this comes out. How do you push the pin in? Easy peasy Japanesey. You come down here, and as you can see, there is a little hole right here, which I already drilled on a bit. Get to that later. and you can then depress that pin and just use the key, move the key over a little bit, and this will just pull right out. Once you can push this in, you're golden anyway. Once you can depress this, you're going to have to use a little tool like this, whatever you have that can fit in there, you're good to go, and then you can pull that whole ignition out. The key may want to slide out depending on how much you've jammed it around, but once it's moved to the accessory position, the key should be locked in place, so you should be able to use that to pull that right out. You know what, I might even try and demonstrate that right now, just in case it's not 100% clear. Sorry, I know the camera's just wobbling all over the place, but I didn't really have time to set this up really well. So, take the key, stick it in, we can move it just one position, and from there we can depress that little button right there, and I'm going to try and hold two things here. I'm going to go up to the ignition, and I should be able to, easier said than done apparently. Try this again. Depress that, and the entire assembly. Okay, we're going to put this down for a sec. So again, pushing it in, and I'm jiggling my key around a little bit. You know what? So much for the experiment, because this brings us to what I was going to speak about earlier. I did do a bit of a drill job on that. Nothing too serious, but it seems like it's just enough now where it's kind of catching. I could easily pull this out with a little bit of extra work, but we're not going to go into that. Rest assured, take my word for it, that once the pin is depressed, this should come out just fine. So the problem you just saw me encounter there is going to bring me to the next step. Let's say you can't get this thing out at all. You can't move it to the accessory position, because that's probably the position you're in if you're going to be watching this. Hey, look, you know what I did? These things are pretty tough. I took, sorry about the beep, I took a hammer, and I had a screwdriver, but it was bigger than this. It was actually a very small chisel, a small-headed chisel. So, large instrument, hammer, and with my 200 pounds, I was wailing on that key. And I figured, well, alright, this thing is not starting, so what's the worst? I'm going to have to replace my lock cylinder regardless, right? So I figured, why not give it a little try? Who cares if I wreck it at this point? So I just hammered into there, just using a chisel, and that didn't work. Then I put the key in afterwards, and I got lucky. With this key, and this old cylinder that I've shown you here, that I have just beat the hell out of. Believe me, I drove a chisel about a good 1.5 inches in there. And then I took the key instead of the chisel, which I probably should have done first, so that would be my advice. Take the key and hammer the hell out of it. Make sure you got a nice straight hit on the hammer so you don't bend the key. And it's probably worth a shot, even if you have to hold it with a pair of vice grips or something. I know it's at a funny angle here, as you can probably see from me constantly going back and forth around this wheel. It actually, when you put anything in here, it kind of wants to hit the wheel. So I found that the longer chisel thing worked a little bit better, because it had about a 10-inch like handle on it, or not handle, but chisel face. So that helped in me putting it at a bit of an angle. And sure enough, the key popped in. I got to the accessory, pulled the pin, pulled it on out. If you can't pull it out, if you cannot possibly get this into that position by turning it and by hammering directly on the key, as I did, and got lucky. Which, again, you might want to really consider if you're stuck, because that could save you. Because if you're going to be replacing this thing anyway, you kind of have to make the decision yourself. If you realize, all right, this thing is definitely so buggered up, has nothing to do with the steering wheel. Make sure that it has nothing to do with that. Well, then probably worth it to give it a shot just to get to that accessory position, and then you can at least pull out that cylinder and replace it. And once you're also in the accessory position, I know this is a long-winded video, but once you get in that accessory position, you'll be able to remove it, and once you remove it, you will see, as you can see from this thing, it's long, right? So that little guy you see right at the end there, that hooks in to the end of this really long shaft. And I mean, it's about 4.5, 5 inches down. You will see. I'm going to have to get right out of the car for this. So let's follow our way down. Okay, we're at the front. There's the key where it would go in. That's the pinhole. And this little guy here, you see that little square? If you ever take this off when you're working on your car, just so you know, there's a little pin on the other side. I believe it has something to do with the ringer, and I noticed when I drove it, for about 5 minutes it'll heat up red hot if you don't depress that pin, put that back on. So, little tip. But we were talking about putting this in the accessory position. You're stuck. You jam it onto the accessory position. You can then, back here you'll see a big wire clip. And it's white. It's sort of distinctive from the rest of the area. As you can see, it's right there. And you can pretty easily pull off this wire clip. And there's 2 screws which are not easy to get to. And I'm showing you right there in center. I'm tapping. It is facing the opposite way of us. In other words, it's not there. No. It's coming in from the other side. And there's 2 of them. And if you use a nice little tool like this, which are kind of hard to find and kind of expensive, you can reach on there pretty easy. But not a big deal. Go to the local store, get yourself a little stubby screwdriver, and you can pop that out. And when you do, once you've moved it to the accessory position, you can take this off and start the car. You'll just have to pop this off, and you'll see a little area in there where you can just stick a screwdriver in, and this thing pops the car, and there's no damage to the car whatsoever. That's again if you've just hammered this over and you couldn't push this pin in or whatever. If you can push this pin in and this whole shaft does come out, then you can use a pair of needle nose pliers. I realize as I'm talking here, I've kind of gone astray. Sorry, it's not really sequential, is it? You can use a pair of needle nose pliers to reach down that shaft. There it is, that long shaft here. So you'll start with the keyhole by placing the pliers in there. And way at the back, you'll see this little guy that you can turn with the needle nose pliers. And that's how we drove the car for a couple of days. Now, if you just get the steering wheel unlocked, again, you can start it that way. If you don't want to try and drill this thing out or anything, if you just manage to get it unlocked by hammering it, and you don't have all the tools and jazz to try and get that out, well, okay, so be it. And then you can try the other way. But those are just your different options. As long as the steering wheel is unlocked, this can easily be removed by jamming your head down there, and you're going to get dirty. Or if you're lucky, you can kind of feel around and get to screw number 1. There's another one right over there on the other side. And they're right at the bottom of this unit. One's on one side, one's just to the right of it. And that'll pop off. Car will start up, no problem at all. But your steering wheel, if it's locked, that's a whole separate issue. Only way I find to get out of that situation is basically to break it. If someone knows better, please advise or leave a comment on that. So basically, just to get this thing started, unless you're really stuck, you just take off this little panel here. And what I found helpful, if you're going a little bit further, like I did take out a piece of the It's a ventilation. Just a little piece of plastic ventilation. But anyways, this little cover, you're gonna have a few screws. There. A tough one to get, just so you know. Right there. This is a little 10mm guy. And you're gonna have to really wedge this back if you want to take off this whole panel. It's not really necessary. Once you get these screws off here, it should fall down more than enough to access it if you just want to push the pin in. If you want to do a little more, need more room, fine, take off the 10mm there. And this thing is for the hood, and you kind of have to unscrew it from the plastic cover, and then you're gonna have to kind of whittle it through. There's a little hole for it. There's another one for the computer. I think I've tucked it away here as well. That's on the far left. And you just take that off and put it aside. Not much to it at all. Very simple Phillips screwdriver. I think it was an 8mm or 10mm. And that's about it. Take it apart. Once you get this jammed in and popped off, take out the old one. Again, this on eBay was, I believe, 25 bucks, something like that. And this is the old one, the new one's in the ignition. Made in China. Again, not quite as sturdy as the original Toyota, but if you're in the position that I was in, giving it, in fact, it's a 98. 14-year-old car, I think this will last longer than the car. And that's the whole thing from A to Z. So, hope it'll help somebody out.